Hi, welcome back to the Counterfeit Emotions podcast. I am so excited for this week's episode because I have my good friend Clay Olsen here, who has been one of the seminal leaders in Utah and around the world in helping to fight against the new drug, pornography. And we're going to have a deep discussion today about the truths, the myths. We're going to talk about what's helpful, what's not. We're going to talk about some trends. We're going to look at different things around how we can get pornography out of our lives. And I'm so glad you're willing to join us on the Counterfeit Emotions podcast. If you find the podcast helpful, then something that would help me a lot is if you'd click the like and subscribe. And if you're on YouTube, click that bell so you get notifications every time the podcast comes out. And that way you can keep going on the journey to find the one emotion that has no counterfeit, and that's peace. So, Clay, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So glad you're here. So glad you're here. Yes. And we've gotten back a little ways and back to the days. I remember the premiere of the movie with
Brainheart World.
Fighting the new drug. And then you came and spoke at the Safe to Feel conference and all sorts of good things. And just to give people a little bit of reference of how you got into this and how you got started with such an incredible movement. Like, give us the history.
Well, okay, yeah. I mean, I guess I would start with the fact that personally, I've always been driven since I was a young age toward two things: entrepreneurship. And I love creation. I love storytelling and creativity, and impact. I always wanted to get involved in something that I felt was a positive influence on the world. I sometimes joke with my staff and say, I'm not interested in selling paper clips, and no offense to individuals that actually sell paper clips for a living. I just, I'm not interested in just doing something that is kind of that doesn't have an impact in the world for positivity. And so I've always just been driven towards something that I felt, solving some of our societal issues and problems. Well, so for a long time, I thought that was going to be through storytelling. I was a filmmaker. I started a company called Advent Creative, Timeline Films, that merged into Advent Creative. And we did documentaries. We did all sorts of things, and it was a lot of fun. It scratched a creative itch for sure. But over time, I just felt like there was kind of something missing. And a few buddies of mine, we were talking one evening. We were part of a group up on campus at Utah State University, and we thought, this topic of pornography came up, and it was just like, we got to do something about this. This is a topic that was impacting our peers and our own lives in ways that deserved attention, and there's so little attention being made at that time. There's so few talking about this subject, and it was really a curiosity because we kind of thought, well, is there something more to this conversation beyond just a value system or a belief system? Is there something kind of deeper underpinning, maybe even a public health reality to this issue, which led us to start doing some research on campus, and we found at the time what we felt was just a mountain of data and truth. Looking back now, it was a molehill compared to what we now have available to us. But we thought this deserves to be known. There's neurological research indicating the harms to individuals. There's societal research on the society, and there's relational research on relationships. And we thought, we got to make this known. And we were inspired. I was inspired by the tobacco campaign, the Truth Campaign against tobacco. Where they took research and science and packaged it in a way that connected with young people, and they would toured the country in assemblies and had ad campaigns on TV about those risks, and to help people kind of question smoking, question their behavior or the cultural norm.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of this aha moment to say, that's what we need to do with pornography. We need to change the conversation about pornography using science, facts, and personal accounts to help people consider before consuming. And that was, gosh, nearly 17 years ago now.
Wow. Has it been that long?
It's been a long time.
Wow. And from my perspective, like you said, I didn't really see anything out there besides the hush hush conversations
Yeah.
of maybe a pornography recovery program in the church, or there was some other things, but it was very quiet. It was
It was
the
very quiet and also kind of like a finger wag kind of dialogue. Like
yeah.
it was oftentimes scolding, shameful at times, and and it was something that our generation was dealing with like no other generation in the history of the world had ever seen or
Mm,
had to grapple with. And so it was kind of like this, we were coming to a head. It's like, we need to address this. We need to talk about this. And this is a challenge that is clearly, thanks to the internet that kind of emerged in 1995 to really kind of start to enter into households. And then in 2006, 2008, the smartphone in our hands, that really changed the trajectory of access,
mm-hmm.
availability, just adoption and acceptability of pornography in our culture. And it really turned what was maybe kind of this kind of sidelined conversation and kind of in dark corners into something that was mainstream and
Front and
just
center.
front and center,
Yeah.
and impacting young people at levels that we'd never seen.
Yeah. And the National Library of Medicine, they did a study 2 years ago that they asked people, have you looked at pornography in the last month? And the results said that of men, 91.5%
Yeah.
said yes. And even more surprising, 61.5% of women said yes.
Yeah.
Which
is a growing trend.
That stat is crazy, because
Yeah.
you go back a couple decades and that was in the single digits
Correct.
for the women, and now it's over
Well,
half.
the pornography industry recognized that they were leaving behind an entire demographic and leaving money on the table. So they started to craft content geared towards that demographic to start to like lure them in to having similar behaviors and similar appetites for consumption.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm just thinking back in my memory, like before you started Fight the New Drug, um, it wasn't like, as far as I can remember, it wasn't a topic that people were out there. And I even remember people having hush hush conversations about Fight the New Drug. Like, did you hear? Did you hear what? There's this organization, and
Yeah.
and it was so taboo at the time that even those conversations were.
Yeah, and we, that was one of our objectives, was to kind of like shift that, because anytime, and this is true, anytime that I ever saw any content online or on television about pornography, or someone telling their story about their struggle with pornography, without fail, it was shadowed faces, dark faces.
Mm-hmm.
This is just like struggling with pornography. This isn't like somebody that had done something horrific necessarily with illegal behavior. This is just consumption of pornography. They would change their voice, alter their voice, put a blur on their face, or darken their face so that the interviewer could be interviewing somebody, but their identity was disguised.
Yeah.
And that was the way that people would talk about it, is if like, you could hide my identity because it's too shameful to expose myself to the world. And we said, I remember I said, because my background was filmmaking, and I thought, I'm going to change that. So the second that I I actually left my agency and sold out to my partners, and I went into a warehouse, which was the first headquarters of Fight the Drug, and just myself clicking on a computer, just like, like, what is this going to become? And I thought, well, let me start telling some stories. And one of the first things I did was like, we contacted somebody that we knew was struggling. We said, we want to tell your story about this, and in the way that you want it told. And we filmed it, and and we told a story of overcoming and struggle and challenge, and uh, and we, their face was fully exposed, and
Uh-huh.
and we were able to show like this thing. And I remember getting comments of people saying, "Oh my goodness, like I didn't know you could do that." And we started and we've now produced hundreds and hundreds of stories in film, and thousands of stories in written form of people telling their story. And it's powerful, it's motivating, it's inspiring, and it's no longer this shameful dark secret. It's like this, yeah, I've struggled, so have so many of us. And
91.5%.
exactly. And here's my story of overcoming. Here's my story of my success story. And it's been really positive and powerful to just bring it out of the shadows into the light, where we can have a conversation without judgment, without, ridicule, with just compassion and love and support
Yeah.
to those individuals.
Yeah. And light cleanses.
Light cleanses.
When we bring it into the light, it can sanitize and it can cleanse. And the Brene Brown, she did a study on shame, and she found that shame needs 3 ingredients: silence, which we saw, secrecy, definitely, and then judgment. Those are the 3 ingredients of
And that
shame.
judgment can come from ourselves, judging ourselves, pulling ourselves down, and it can also come from those around us as we feel the judgment of others. And that triad combination has actually been shown as in her research and others to perpetuate the very struggle that they're dealing with. Like, so shame is more closely correlated with the continuation of the behavior that you're trying to avoid, whereas guilt, on the other hand, has been shown to be more of a course correction, more of a realignment with one's core values and understanding, and a kind of an improvement, a directional improvement, rather than a perpetuating downward spiral.
Yeah. And
you know about that.
Yeah. The University of Oslo, as well as Brene Brown, they did 2 independent studies, and they found that if you want to get into addiction or bullying or suicidal ideation, shame is a direct path in. That is the method of how to get into those behaviors. You want to get out. They flipped the study, and they found that guilt was the direct path out.
Beautiful.
And it was fascinating, because if you go back in the research, 50, 100 years, almost every study says the guilt/shame study. They put them together.
As if they're synonymous, as if they're the same,
Yeah.
when they could not be further from one another. They are opposites.
You look at the results, and one leads to the behavior, the other leads out of the behavior. You want to get into addiction, get into shame.
And I think societally, too often we do conflate the two, which means that we negatively associate guilt. We look at guilt as something that don't guilt me, or
that's such a guilt trip.
It's such a guilt trip, or I feel guilty, and that's like I shouldn't feel guilty, and therefore you need to change the way I need to change the way I'm looking at this, or you need to change the way you're talking to me about this, because this is not good. It's like, well, hold on. There's a beauty. Time out. There's a beautiful reality that guilt in our society that guilt can provide. Guilt is something that we should never turn from. It's something that helps us course correct in our own core values, and is something that really orients us in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And shame is self-destructive, and everything that they say about shame is true. Like, shame is really toxic.
Yeah, it's the lowest frequency emotion.
Don't conflate it with guilt.
Yes,
guilt is something I embrace. Guilt. When I feel guilty, I'm like, thank you.
Yeah,
like, I need this.
Yeah, I was just at a men's retreat, and there were 50 guys there, and the presenter at this time, they're like, "Who likes guilt?" And I was the only person that raised my hand, and I'm like, I do, because I know the result of
Was
guilt.
his intention to suggest that nobody likes it and whatever, or was he trying to get to the point that you were making?
No, he was very much of the guilt shame mashup.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm so glad you were there.
Let's mash these two together. Yeah. And the truth is, guilt it actually comes from an old English word. If you look at the etymology, it's in the 1300s, called gilden. And the word gilden means to repay or make whole. So the feeling of guilt is not the feeling of shame, but we've conflated the two.
Yeah.
And the feeling of guilt is, I hurt you and I want to repay. I want to make restitution. I want to make you whole. That's the feeling of guilt, and that is so healthy.
Yeah.
That's so healthy to be able to say, I know how it feels to hurt, and I hurt you, and I want to repay. I
Yeah.
want to repair. I want to connect.
Right. And I think I've heard you talk about this and others talk about this, but guilt, shame is more associated with our identity, and guilt is associated with our actions and behaviors. And
Yes.
when we can separate those two effectively, we should lean into guilt. Like, hey, this had negative consequences to myself or others, and this is not something that I want or is not aligned with my core values, and I can move away from it. We should lean into guilt. Shame is suggesting that I myself am flawed or unworthy or bad,
Yeah.
and that is the toxicity that we need to avoid.
Yeah.
You are a divinely potential, magnificent individual, and that doesn't go away regardless of your actions. You have that potential inside you no matter what.
Yeah. And I love how you said that. Like, guilt says I did something wrong. Shame says I am wrong.
Right.
Guilt says I made a mistake, but shame says my existence on earth is a mistake. And it's such a big difference
Yeah.
to be able to look at it in that way. One talks to the action, the other says, no, my character, which is set in stone, says I'm a bad person.
And I think the reason why we're spending so much time on this is because this topic of shame, particularly, is so often associated with the conversation of pornography, because people feel an immense amount of shame regarding pornography, their consumption of pornography, either because societally it's so unacceptable, and so well, again, that's shifting
Yeah.
in a negative way, where it's
And
becoming
you
more
had
acceptable.
a major
Well,
impact
well, I
on
guess
that
there's two
shift.
different shifts. One, the shift is like that we're becoming more aware of the consequences, but there's also a counter shift that is happening culturally at large that is becoming more acceptable to view pornography. It's
Yeah.
okay, it's fine,
Yeah.
it's healthy, it's normal, it's a natural outlet, and it's like, don't be ashamed of this. So it's interesting to see people kind of shifting in that direction, which is a negative cultural shift, because it's allowing and perpetuating a behavior that has, scientifically proven negative consequences. And also the positive shift of people recognizing that this has harm, that there are consequences, and moving in more healthy directions, avoiding the hollow counterfeit and moving toward real love, real connection, and deeper meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
And that's the shift that we want to see.
Yeah.
But it's so often like tied to say, if you by suggesting that pornography has negative consequences, by speaking about the harmful effects, you're shaming those that view pornography.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to push against that, to say no, like we want to. Shame only makes this topic and the subject that much more complex and challenging, and to get out of it, again, as we just discussed, it makes it that much more challenging to overcome if shame is a part of the consequence. So I am with the army of people saying we need to remove shame from this subject,
Mm-hmm.
from oneself and others. But to speak about the negative consequences of pornography, and to try to awaken a generation to the realities of this, and again, culturally, as we look at the whole, we've got a lot of work to still do on that front to help people consider before consuming.
Yeah.
And that's not in an effort to shame those that are viewing pornography. Sometimes we talk about the negative societal consequences, and it feels heavy. And some people feel like, that they feel that they are taking on that burden on their shoulders because they are maybe contributing with their consumption. And it's like, we need to separate that. We need to separate and say, like, we can recognize that this has negative individual, relational, and societal consequences. We can look at the research behind it. And regardless of whether you are periodically consuming, or if you have been, avoiding it for many years, or free from it for many years, regardless of that reality, we can still acknowledge the negative consequences here, and separate that from our own identity, and say, look, if that's you, if you're struggling, you're not alone. and there's support. And we want to help you. We want to open the door wide to say, come and we'll support you. We love and with compassion, without judgment. When I hear people that struggle with pornography, I don't think, ugh, ugh.
What a pariah. Let's get
Yeah.
him out of
I
society.
mean, there's
Yeah.
not a single presentation. I just
Yeah.
got back from Guatemala. I did about 11 schools, a mini tour down Guatemala, speaking to schools about the negative consequences of pornography. And there isn't a single time that I will present at a school and not have a line of people wanting to tell their story about their own struggle. And I don't sit there and go, ugh, like you guys
You're
are
gross.
like, not at all. Just the opposite. When they say like, hey, I struggle with pornography, I'm like, yeah. You're not alone. Like
91.5%.
Yeah.
And you know what? Probably in that 8.5, there's probably about half of them that are just lying.
not telling the truth. I've only met one individual in all of my years. I've met thousands and thousands and thousands of people over the years on this subject, talking about this topic. And I've only met one individual that claimed, and this was like an individual probably at the time that I met him, he was like in his mid 30s maybe, and he claimed he had never seen pornography. Now I don't know if he's lying or what, but I was like, you are a unicorn. Like this doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So it's just it's highly unlikely that people will. I always tell parents, it's not if, but when they will be encounter pornography and to what degree. And that's the conversation. We're not going to withhold this from them forever. It's a matter of like, putting the protective guardrails around and having those healthy conversations to help them recognize those things when they do encounter them. They will encounter pornography, period.
It is, it happens. And I'm really glad you brought up the fact that we look at the pendulum, and inside counterfeit emotions, every dyad or every pair of emotions has a pendulum. And you look at the shame and guilt, right? On the one side is shame, but then on the other side is just this apathy of, well, you know what? Who cares? Who cares about if I look at pornography or not? Oh. And you can swing between those two, but if you stop the swings, right in the center is where you find guilt. That's where the healthy side of things is.
Oh, I love that.
Instead of I don't care or look how shameful I am. Instead, when we stop the mood swings, that's where we find guilt.
And by the way, it's usually the individuals that find themselves on either end of that, on either extreme. Oftentimes they start with kind of the shame, whether they're young or whether they start here. But over time, that's too painful to stay there.
Yeah.
It hurts to feel that weight. And over time, the side of it, and guilt requires too much work. I can't stay guilt. Guilt requires me to like recognize the challenges, maybe the harm that I've caused, and make course corrections. Guess which one requires the least amount of effort and the least amount of pain? Apathy. Because if I can go over there and if I could stay there. And so often we see this where people feel this, and then eventually they just kind of like break through to the other side and say, you know what, you're all wrong. It's not bad. You're the outdated one. Get with the times. It's fine and it's healthy, and it's part of my identity, and I can't change it, and I should just follow my North Star.
Yeah.
This is who I am, and if you can't love that, then you can't love me.
Yeah.
That is a very toxic. Also a very toxic attitude and mentality to adopt, and it's one that is kind of, I often see that as like a result of the fatigue of the pain and the attempts to fix it and course correct and move in a better way, and then finally say, you know what, I can't, and it must be part of who I am, and that one saddens me, because it's not who they are. It's not who they were meant to be.
Yeah.
And it's not or an accurate reflection of their potential. And that one's hard to get them to move out of, that apathy, because they just want to just say, it doesn't matter. Who cares? Yeah. And lean into it.
Yeah. And I want to actually dig into the research, but before we go in there, like you said, there's this pendulum, and on the one side is shame, and there's even apps like Quitter. I don't know if you've seen Quitter. It's gotten like 300,000 people to sign up on it. And I read an interview with the founders, and they openly say, we are going to shame this out of people.
Whoa.
Yeah, like we're going to make them feel so bad about what they're doing that they're going to quit. And
Oh,
when I read that, my heart just sunk. There's 300,000 people that have subscribed to this, and I'm just like, ugh, how can, you know, because you're right. They can white knuckle and they can stand on this side of the pendulum for so long, but eventually they're going to
yeah. And
drop the ball.
sobriety is not the same as recovery.
It's
So
not.
they're not equals. And
Yeah.
so white knuckling might result in some moments of sobriety, but you're not healed.
Yeah.
You're not you haven't found a deeper purpose where that's no longer a struggle of yours.
Yeah. And that's so important to understand the difference between recovery and sobriety, because I brought my stopwatch. Here we go. Is that if you look at, yeah, if you look at the, see if I can get my stopwatch going here. Um, sobriety has one metric, just one, and that's time. It's
Mhm.
the stopwatch, it's the calendar, it's that little mark in the very top corner that people can't really see, so they don't know. And that's the one metric of sobriety, is how long can I
Mhm.
go? But recovery has a very different metric. Recovery says, how deep can I go? Not how long. It's how deep. How deep in my soul can I dig? How many of the skeletons that are buried in the graveyard of my soul can I unearth and make peace with? That's recovery.
And one uh, creates a result in the other. Meaning, once you address that internal, deeper healing and recovery, it will result in time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
time will be a byproduct of that deeper healing. But if you only focus on time, that's the only energy that you put on, you're going to come right back to, and no corrections have been made internally.
Yeah.
Well, it's not going to be long lived; it's going to be short lived, and you're going to come right back into it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be maybe worse, getting worse as you continue. So, I would say this one internally has far more importance, and it will result in the time. The time will be a byproduct.
Yeah. Yeah. And tell me your thoughts, because sobriety does play a role, but it can't be the end goal.
No, yeah,
Sobriety
exactly.
can't be the end goal,
I mean,
because
the chips or the coins in AA, have provided a lot of hope and support for people overcoming alcoholism, and that can play a positive influence in people's journey. If that's the sole focus of like getting that next chip, well, again, it's going to be short lived. But
yeah.
but
Yeah.
again, looking at those chips as a byproduct of the inner work that's being done, it can be a milestone and a symbol of greater work.
Yeah. And Anna Lemke, she's done tremendous amount of research on the dopamine dependent cycle. And based on her research, there's this stigma that once an addict, always an addict, and that
I don't like
you've,
that phrase. Do you like that
oh,
phrase?
not
I
at
hate that
all,
phrase.
not at all.
I push against that every time I hear it. I'm just like, once an addict, always an addict. What? That's a very crippling. It's a depressing narrative
It
about
is.
addiction.
And like you nail this label to your chest that says addict,
Yeah.
right? And in the same way that if you're an athlete, what do athletes do? They get up early, they eat healthy, they train, they hang out with other athletes, they watch videos about their sport. That's what an athlete does. If you label yourself as addict, well, what is it you do? You do the things an addict does. And the truth is, most men, and I haven't looked at the women's research, but most men are not clinically
No,
addicted.
most men aren't. They're dealing with some level of habituation, compulsion, and some are dealing with clinical levels of addiction.
Yeah,
But we use that term
but it's so
extremely
small.
broadly to. I always talk about the word addiction. I always talk about it like too often we look at it like an on-off switch. Like I have it or I don't. It's
Yeah,
on or it's off. And how I'm not quite an addict and therefore I don't need to worry
yeah,
and until I am. When we ought to be looking at this less like a on-off switch and more like a dimmer switch. to what degree do I struggle? Whether that's a minor level or a more extreme level. Either case, there are things we can do and support mechanisms that we can embrace that will help us move in a more healthy direction. So I'm less
Yeah.
interested as to whether somebody is clinically or quote unquote an addict or not. I'm less interested in that definition. I'm more interested in like, to what degree are we struggling and how can we move you in a more healthy and better direction,
Yeah. Yeah.
and removing those titles and definitions.
Yeah. And I love that you said that. I love that you said that because like the idea, am I sober? Am I not? Am I recovered? Am I not? That is actually part of the problem,
Yeah.
is this black and white thinking that it's all or nothing and that it has to be, off or on. And the definition of sobriety is the time between relapses. There's a relapse here and a relapse here. And in our program, we don't even use the word relapse. We use the word lapse because it goes to this idea that it's not off and on. It's a single moment in time. A relapse implies that all of your history is going to spin up onto your shoulders
Mm.
and it's going to continue to spin into the future. But a lapse in judgment is one event.
One event
And
that you
we
can learn from.
Yeah, we can do something with that. We
Yeah.
can actually use
Rather than
that.
falling back into the pit of despair of the deepest moment that you once were. It's simply like a moment to learn from, to understand, to comprehend, so that you can course correct for the next time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly it.
I love it. That's a
and
great framing.
this idea of, okay, one event happened without the massive elephant on my shoulder of all of my past and how bad I am. No, let's just say, okay, one event happened. I'm more interested in what came before that.
Exactly.
I don't
What led to what created the circumstances and the environmental conditions to allow for that to occur, so that we might understand it, understand the addiction or
Yeah.
the behavior or the compulsion or whatever it is. Understand the moment, understand the lapse, and the better we understand it, the more we can avoid it.
Yeah. And removing the shame and saying, okay, I can do something with this one event. With this one event, I can say, what was the emotion that led here? And based on that emotion, what's my belief? And we backtrack. We say, okay, what's the emotion? All right, well, where did that come from? That came from a belief. Where did that belief come from? That came from an event. And we can backtrack and say, all right, where did I create this belief? What was the event? And what judgment or what meaning did I put on that event? And when we can go back there and when we can rewrite the meaning, not the event. We don't
The event
rewrite the
happened,
event.
it occurred.
It did. It happened. And it either said, I don't have worth. I have this certain belief, whatever. If we can rewrite the meaning to that and then come back and then change that belief, then the emotion changes. And then the trigger that was a trigger, the very next
No
time
longer
that
has to be a
happened,
trigger.
yeah, it's like, okay. It's like, yeah, no, I'm good. We made peace. And the visual, the visual I like to use as my demon is the idea of what we resist persists, right? And so here we are with these emotional demons that haunt us, and we push them down. And that's the sobriety mindset of, we're going to put as many filters on as we can. And how many hymns are you singing? And, what scriptures do you have memorized? And who's in your call list? All of those are good things by themselves, but they don't address the issue. And the issue is that we keep pushing these demons down in our souls. And as long as we do that, that means we have to carry these demons around in our souls. And instead of that, what we do is we pull them out. I call it taking our demons to lunch. We pull them out. We sit across the table from them. We pay the bill. we let them get whatever they want for lunch. And we look at them and we say, help me understand why you're here. Help me understand what you're trying to do for me. And when we do that, we realize they're not demons after all. We realize that they're actually an important part of our soul that is struggling, that we can make peace with, that we can bring back into our soul in a place of peace that's no longer going to be screaming. We can let it rest. And once we do that, we don't have the need for pornography anymore. I hear all the time people are like, "Oh, good, you're going to fix the pornography problem." I'm like, "No, you can't fix pornography. It's damaging, it's destructive. You can't fix that. What we can do is we can heal. We can make peace with the parts of our soul that we've exiled, the parts that we say, no, I don't like you. You need to go away. And we can heal that. Pornography is destructive. It just is. But we can change the need for the pornography. And when we get rid of the need, pornography just evaporates.
Evaporates.
It's
Right.
you don't need filters on your phone. You don't need, the call list. You don't need the constant check-ins. Once this part of you is healed, then that part just goes away.
Evaporates. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's powerful. We've seen the same. We've seen the same as we've talked to so many others. And when you're in the grip of your struggle, when you're deep into it, it's hard to see that potential. It's hard to see a time in which you will be able to operate within the world in a way that is not constantly thinking about or feeling pulled toward pornography. And the reality is that it's not only possible, but we've seen individuals achieve that by by this point, hundreds of thousands, and it's beautiful. And so anybody listening that thinks like, man, I can't,
I'm
that seems like a
hopeless.
fantasy world. That
Yeah.
seems like an impossibility. To that, we collectively, I think you would say the same. It's like, no, don't give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up. It's really possible. You might need some support and guidance along the way. You might need to talk to somebody that can be a Sherpa in that journey. Uh, um, but it's real. It's very real.
Yes.
And man, can you, once you start entering the valley of that peace, there's nothing like it. When you can get there and you can look around and say, this is who I am.
Yeah.
This is who I always have been.
Yeah.
But man, I went through a journey to get here.
Yeah. And I love that we're having this conversation. Thank you so much for all the work you've done. I mean, it's tremendous. 17 years of this and the passion that you put behind this. We've had this conversation before of hope,
Yes.
that there is true hope. There's real recovery available. And notice I didn't say you can be recovered. There's recovery available where you don't have to wake up every morning with a pit in your stomach thinking, is today my last day? Can I white knuckle this all the way till bedtime so that I can go to sleep and mark one more X off the calendar? And that's so miserable.
Oh,
That
so
there's
miserable.
the sobriety mindset is so miserable versus the recovery mindset that says, I can do this. I can heal these guys.
Yeah,
I can make that peace.
that is so important. Coming back to that white knuckle, waking up with a pit in your stomach. Um, Sadly, we have received so many messages and spoken to so many individuals over the years that have felt that for so long, that they felt completely broken, completely beaten down. And when they even felt like the best solution was to no longer exist. And that breaks my heart to think of individuals that are struggling with this to a degree that they're just so deep into this darkness and so hopeless, and pornography has just stripped away their humanity to where they feel like they're not strong enough. They don't have the capacity. They don't have the support. They don't have the love. They don't have the worthiness, whatever it is that they feel, where they just feel like, the actual answer is to be done. And to that person, I just want to wrap my arms around them and say, don't give up. You're here. We're here. We're all here. So many more people that they would never know are surrounding them, wanting to support them and love them, including, I believe, people not of this earth, beyond. that are cheering them on, that says, don't give up. You are worthy. You are not a bad person. You're not broken. And that there are better days ahead. And it simply requires them to start on that journey, to rely upon something greater than themselves, to lean into the support that they have. And I guarantee it, because I've seen it in hundreds of thousands of stories. There is hope. And we've actually done some research on individuals who have we've worked with hundreds of thousands of individuals, and those that have, who have achieved a certain level of recovery and continuation on that path, that way they feel that they've entered that valley of peace. All One of the primary things that is a pattern among those individuals is their hope for better days, their hope that recovery is possible. Once you lose that hope, man, I don't know. Once you lose that hope, recovery is incredibly challenging to find. That so I just want to like yell from the rooftops that it's possible. Don't give up. You're not broken. You can do this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so important. And it's so fascinating because the men I work with, like and I'm sure the men you work with, they come in and they do. Like, it's funny because week 1 of our program, we invite the spouses to come, and we invite them to come to the first week and the last week, and and one of our cohorts, we asked the women, they're like, tell us what you've seen in your husbands. Tell us what you've experienced as they've gone through this. And one of the wives, she's like, when I came the first day, I was like, oh boy, because there was this dark cloud over the entire room. And she said, it's like you added Technicolor. All of a sudden, everybody in this room is just shining, like they're emitting light. And there's one guy in particular that I won't say his name. He's amazing. He came in, and you looked at him, and you're like, that guy is clinically depressed. Like, he is just so sad. And there was one week he came in, and everybody's like, whoa, what happened to you? Because he came in with a smile. He came in so excited. And from that point on, yeah, he was just emitting light. And he was like, I get it. I can overcome this. And that belief, that hope was just
an accelerator, just this amplifier. I often get asked to attend these group kind of sessions, and I was speaking up at a conference up in Boise. I may have told you this story before, but I was speaking up at a conference in Boise, and the night before the conference, they asked me to attend this meeting. I had no idea what it was. I just was like, I'm along for the ride. So like, where are we going?
Yeah.
And I show up, and it didn't take me long to realize, oh, this is a group meeting for people that struggle with pornography. This is like a sexual compulsivity, kind of an AA type style meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat in the room, and I was just a guest. I was an observer. I was listening. And I was completely overwhelmed with what I encountered in that meeting up in Boise. I did not see a group of sad, broken, among all of society, this is kind of the percent that are, really struggling and needing some help. And we're doing a good thing by supporting them. I did not see any of that. What I saw was literally a group of, and in this case, it was all men, a group of generals. And I don't want to get too religious, but like a group of generals in the Lord's army.
Go there.
Because
Let's get religious.
I just saw some of the most powerful giants of men standing in this room that exceeded any other church meeting I've ever been a part of. That was the thing. This was a meeting that some people on the outside might think of as like this is for the lesser of.
Yeah.
And that couldn't be further from the truth. I wish I could help people understand. Like, this meeting was for some of the greatest of. Like, they were so powerful and strong and giants and emitting light. And I was in awe. At the end, I was just like, I was speechless. And they asked me to say a few words, and I could barely get a word out. I was like, you guys don't know who you are. You guys don't know. You guys don't know what kind of power is in this room. I am blown away with who you guys are and the power and the impact that you're going to have in this world. I'm grateful to be a part of this. And I think when people can kind of feel that they are part of that, or that they are capable of that, or that they are that's who they are, man, how can that not provide you hope for your own life, but also for us as a group, as a society? Man, there's a lot of power out there. And a lot of that power is coming from people that have been in some pretty dark places. I'm grateful for them.
Yeah. I feel the exact same way. Like, I look at the men that join the group, and they are great men. They're great men. They're not flawed. They're not damaged beyond repair. They are great men who struggle with pornography. And that's solvable.
That's solvable.
That's completely solvable. And I want to go back to hope, because the reason, like, my past has not been mental health and emotionology. My past has been tech entrepreneur. And it was because of my friend Jerry, who didn't know the difference between recovery and sobriety. He didn't know the difference between guilt and shame. He didn't know the difference between pain and misery. And he was really good at holding on. He was really good at white knuckling, but he lived with fear every day that coin, that actually the coin would be that, oh, I've got one more addition of fear because I've made it this long. And the longer I go, the more I'm afraid. And Jerry left us because he had a lapse. And I'm not okay with that. He didn't have that hope. And that's actually why I changed my entire career, was because of what I was going through and what Jerry went through. And I said, this is not okay. We've got to change the narrative. We've got to help people understand you're not flawed. You're human, just the way God made you. You're exactly where you need to be. And yeah, pornography is destructive. It hurts your brain. It hurts your relationships. It is destructive, but you're not destructive. You're not broken. You're not flawed. You're not the one that is beyond repair. You don't actually even need repair. You're just human.
Yeah.
That needs some tools.
Yeah. And I think that there should be a bit of grace offered, because, again, we live in a society that is pushing us from behind with enormous force to struggle with this. It's more available, more acceptable, more anonymous, more addictive than any other time in human history. Yeah. It's no wonder that we are struggling in these ways. Of course we are, and like no other generation before us. And so, we ought to look at our own challenges and struggles with a bit of grace and say, look, I'm living in this world, and this is a world that is not perfect. It's a fallen world, and there's challenges to it. And this is a journey. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And I'm gonna get a little bit, bloody along the way, but doesn't mean that I'm not going to be able to finish, and that I'm not going to be able to hold my head high when I do, with scars and all. And
Scars
so
and all.
I think
Scars and all.
I think too often we just look at this as, and social media hasn't done us any favors, presenting kind of the perfect family and the perfect life and the perfect this, and we look at ourselves and we say, well, I'm struggling in these ways. I'm not where I want to be financially. My relationship isn't where I want to be, or maybe it's struggling and falling apart, or and I'm struggling in these ways personally and spiritually, and it's just kind of compounding. When the reality is that many of us are struggling in a variety of different ways, and none of us are perfect. And I think having a little bit of that grace to the circumstances we find ourselves in, the challenges that we face, while still feeling that orientation towards something better, knowing that we can continually strive. That word strive is a beautiful word.
Yeah.
Strive to improve, strive to make better choices, strive to reach further than we had before. That continuous strive is something we should never let go of, regardless of the current circumstances. I just think too often we feel like we're an anomaly, or we are uniquely broken or uniquely damaged.
Yeah.
And that is like something that we secretively carry, that if people knew all that was me, they would run.
That I'm this imposter, that I'm
this imposter. And
so when people feel that, like for everyone that's listening right now, when they feel that, when it's like too much, I can't expose myself. If everybody knew who I really was, they would hate me and it'd be over. And like, how do people that are listening right now, how do they get out of that? Because if they can get out of that and start the journey, if they can get to the point where they say, you know what, I've made choices and they've hurt me, and I'm willing to get humble and say, okay, it's time. It's time to bring this into the light. Get rid of that silence and secrecy and judgment. How do people get to that point?
Well, I think you said it in the beginning when you said that light cleanses, and I think a recognition that light cleanses. I don't know what the percentage is in reality, but like anytime I have seen or heard anybody expose some vulnerable information about themselves in my presence or in others, and people telling their stories about them, kind of coming out and talking about some of the challenges they face, so often that is met with the opposite reaction than they expected. They expected to be rejected. They expected for the people to say, ew, yuck,
You're
get away from me.
Yes.
You're a monster. What actually occurs, whether it's from an ecclesiastical leader, whether it's from a spouse or a partner, whether it's from a friend or a colleague, whatever it is, when you open yourself up, what you most often receive is love and compassion, and kind of a in some cases, depending on what the details are, like I'm not perfect either, and there's kind of this like sharing of vulnerabilities that can really strengthen that bond, and kind of like you may not know this about me, but I have struggled in these ways, or I have gone through these challenges that, like, you, like, yeah. So I've spoken to fathers and sons at times, and one of the things we talk to fathers and sons is appropriately sharing your own struggles appropriately is a positive thing with your children. Too often children kind of put their fathers on a pedestal as if they've never struggled with anything. Mm-hmm. And that puts this really distant kind of feeling, because they might be struggling. They likely are struggling in some ways, and they feel like, well, dad would have never dealt with these because of like this testimony he has, or the person he's become, or the decisions he's made, or the teachings he's given me, and therefore I can never share this.
Yeah. And
so appropriately, again, not gory details or anything like that, but appropriately sharing, son, me too.
I struggled.
Son, I'm not perfect. Son, I went through a similar challenge when I was young, and this is what I learned from it, and this is how I dealt with it, and this is how I overcame it. Those things are just empowering. And so coming back to the individual that feels trapped in this like imposter emotion, a recognition that by sharing it with someone that you trust, someone that you care for and that you love, the most likely reality of that conversation is that you're going to be met with love and compassion and support and embraced. And it's actually going to strengthen your bond with that individual rather than deteriorate it or damage it in any way. And that when they have that recognition, when they finally step over that line and do that, it is one of the most freeing things that they could do. And they say, I wish I'd done this 10 years ago. I wish I'd have talked to you about this way back. Too often we feel like we have to fix it first
Yeah.
and then open up.
Yeah.
Too often we feel like we have to I need to get this under control, and then I will bring it to so and so or this person. Then because then it's like this, like, oh, I used to deal with this thing, but I'm good now.
As long as people are in that shame factor well, I'm now not doing it. I'm not, I'm not
Yeah.
in it right now.
Yeah.
Therefore, don't shame me.
Yeah.
Don't.
You can look at me better because this was a past thing.
Yeah.
Because if it was current, then of course you would judge me, and so I can't let that happen. So I'm going to hold on to this until it's no longer a thing, and that is so that, oh gosh, I wish I could just say like, no, no, no. By doing that, you're prolonging the happiness that you could otherwise feel so much earlier by opening up in the midst of part of the journey. It's going to strengthen your capacity to overcome it
Yeah.
far sooner than you otherwise would have been able to if you open up and expose those challenges to people you trust and love. It's going to open you up to overcome so much sooner than you otherwise would be able to. But you're going to be accompanied by an army, depending on how large of an opening you make it. But in the case of group, like, you're going to open up to an army of supporters that are there with you, that are fighting the battle with you, that are pushing for the similar objective. That there's an immense amount of encouragement and support that comes along with that. So don't hesitate. Do not delay. Open up. Be vulnerable. The more we understand about this particular issue as well as other issues, the more we as a society start to recognize, um, uh, to start to have a level of understanding and grace and compassion with this. When I was down in Guatemala, I was speaking to a bunch of parents, and their initial reaction was, again, more of like, pitchforky, fear mongering, kind of like scared. And I
Mm,
helped them, kind of reorient that energy toward, um, uh, compassion for their youth and understanding, and to be a partner and a companion on that journey. And it was great. We had a great discussion and great Q&A session, and some of them came up afterwards and said, this is changing completely how I'm going to approach my son, rather than I told you so, you knew better,
yeah.
I taught you differently. um it's more of like a, oh yeah, I get it. Let's how what can I do to support? How can I
Yeah.
be here for you? And that's a game changer.
Yeah. I think one of the greatest things that a parent can say to their child, or a wife can say to their husband, is number one, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you for sharing this with me.
It
Number,
must have been difficult. I
yeah,
know this took a lot of courage.
yes,
Thank you for opening up, because now it's in the light, and now it can be cleansed.
yeah. And the second thing is, I'm here.
Hmm.
Is just say, I'm here. No matter how hard this is, no matter what you're going through, I'm here.
I'm on your team.
We're going to do this together.
I'm in your corner.
Yeah.
And that is, yeah, that is, and there's something to be said about, a spouse, and this subject. There is something to be said about their how they react. That the reaction you described is a beautiful one, and they might need to deal with their own, um, feelings and emotions of trauma that accompany maybe some betrayal aspects of that, depending on the details of the story.
Yeah.
There might need to be some work that they need to do, with a professional, perhaps possibly on their own journey, because we often hear from women that they are the suppressors of their betrayal feelings.
Yeah.
In an effort to support their spouse, they suppress a lot of kind of emotions of like of pain and wounds. And so both require a bit of healing and journey, and the husband and the spouse ought to be cognizant of that and aware of that and supportive of their own healing path as well. And that journey is a collective one, and journey is a companionship between it. And it can be done. It can be done. And it is one that, coming back to that valley of peace, that, it's real.
It's
It's like,
real.
have you ever seen, Land Before Time.
Yeah.
The promised land. What do they call it? Is it the promised land or
It's something like that. Yeah.
whatever it is? Where they when they arrive, it is this kind of utopian spot for these journeying dinosaurs going through challenges and adventures and risks, and they finally arrive, and it's this peaceful valley with plenty of food and community and vegetation and water. And I feel like that valley, they in the movie, the reason I bring it up is because they talked about maybe it's a myth, maybe it's fake, maybe it's not real, maybe it's, and that one dinosaur is like, no, it's real, continue, we got to believe that, my mom believed it and I believe it. Don't give up on that valley, because
Yeah.
it's a real valley. That peaceful valley of no longer being plagued with this is a real thing, and people have found it, and it's something that we can all journey toward, and we have to recommit to all the time.
Yeah. I, yeah. There's so much hope. And for anyone listening, for for you that's listening, know there is hope. You don't have to live with the misery of sobriety. You don't have to hide. You don't have to get into a place where you put all this silence and secrecy around it. That when you bring it into the light, you can find that peace. You can have that hope. You can understand a different, completely different way of life. And I'm so grateful that you're doing the work you're doing, because I truly believe even if all of us combined forces, there still wouldn't be enough. the
Amen.
the problem is so pervasive, but understanding that we are divine, understanding there is a way out, there is hope in that, and this is the time, like right now, to grab hold and say, okay, I'm going to start down this path. And one thing that I know when someone is in recovery is when they actually become grateful for their lapses.
Mm.
And I know this sounds so contradictory, like, wait, what? You're grateful that you looked at pornography? No, that's destructive. But what they find gratitude in is that God took a map of their soul and he put an exact pin in the location they need to dig. It's not a 20, 30-mile radius of go be good. Everybody wants to be good. No, this is God saying, this is where I need you to grow, right here in this spot. Nowhere else. I need you to go right here. Dig up this demon and say, I'm going to make peace with you so you can stop screaming in my skull. And that's where I need you to grow today. And when I see that in people, when I see that, to say, okay, this is actually a blessing instead of a curse. And they get on their knees and they thank God. They say, thank you for helping me know where to grow. That's when I
It's
know
beautiful.
they're in recovery, because then they do the work. They do the digging instead of this spiral of
Instead of
shame.
one lapse turning into 2 and 4 and 12,
Yes,
it's one lapse that they
it's
learn
one.
from, and they move on. And then if another
Dig
lapse
it up.
happens, it's one at a time, step by
Yes.
step.
And that's recovery. And it's completely different than the sobriety mindset of you have to be perfect. You have to be exactly perfect for a time in all eternity. No, it's be introspective. Be the kind of person that hears the message, that is willing to go dig,
Mhm.
that says, okay, this little guy right here, God told me where he's at. I'm going to go dig him up, and we're going to become friends. We're going to find peace with each other. And that way there's no more need. There's no more need to ever go
I
back.
love that. It's beautiful. And that shift, that paradigm shift of approach, that paradigm shift of awareness toward the struggle can make all the difference. It can lead you from years of back and forth, years of struggle, toward a path that is not, without its bumps, it's not without its challenges, but it is a path that leads you ultimately to recovery and peace. Um, the destination that we're all striving for. So I love that mentality shift. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful one.
Yeah. And we've all struggled with this, and we all can find that peace.
Hmm.
And that is the one emotion in all of the counterfeit emotion dyads that has no counterfeit, is peace. And so, Clay, where do you find peace?
Where do I find peace? Um, I I guess I want to set this up a little bit and say, um, the world around us often has the opposite feeling of not the news we consume, the social media. Oftentimes we feel like, and more today, we feel like peace is distant and far away.
Hmm.
And where can we individually find it? And I've thought about this quite a bit in my life, like, because there are times where the world is spinning around me. I had this one experience that maybe kind of sheds light on my answer to the question. There was a time in my life, it was back in college. A lot was going on in my life. I look back on it. Sometimes you look back on, the struggles of when you were in high school and you're like, man, I wish those are the struggles I still deal with, because today, they get just bigger.
Yeah.
But at this time I was feeling overwhelmed in college, and bills, and where am I going to go in my life, and girlfriend trouble, just all the things,
All the college things.
all the college things. And I was feeling overwhelmed. I was feeling so down, so dark. I'm not one who naturally struggles with depression, but I was feeling dark. And I remember going, like, I could not sleep. And I remember
Hmm.
waking up, and I went on a walk at 2 o'clock in the morning. Just went out on the road in my neighborhood, and I just walked. And I was, I was ruminating, and my mind was going on all the struggles and challenges that I face. And I remember it was kind of close to a full moon, if not a full moon. And I remember looking up, and I saw these mountains that were almost glowing purple. And these mountains had existed well before I existed, well before I was born. And they will continue on existing well after I'm gone. And the sturdiness of these mountains, and they were just majestic. And I remember in this moment actually saying out loud on this walk, well, at least the mountains are still beautiful. And it was kind of a way of me saying, all of my challenges and struggles, when compared to the majesty of our existence, to the majesty of my potential, to the majesty of my identity and who I am and my purpose here on earth, man, all of a sudden in a blip, they just kind of dissolved. And I felt this immense amount of peace when I detached myself from the chaos of day to day and the chaos of the decisions of this moment, and recognized who I really was, and recognized kind of where I existed and the broader purpose of this. Man, I felt a peace that like hit me so hard. I began to weep in that moment. I
Hmm.
began to like everything shifted. It went from like, what am I going to do? How am I going to make it? What are people going to think? To, I'm okay. I'm good, because I know who I am. I know who's in charge. I know where this ends. I know the plan. And that brings me. So you ask, where do I find peace? I find immense peace when I come home from a hard day at work, where decisions are things are chaotic, and I come home to my family, and I look into the eyes of my children. I have 4 beautiful daughters, and when I look, and the youngest is 3 years old, and I look into her eyes, and just the innocence and the beauty and the simplicity of her existence, I'm just like, all is well. All is well. So, spirituality, connection to something higher than me, and family bring me immense amount of peace in the chaos of the world. And I hold on to those just tightly and dearly. There's a lot of other things that bring me happiness and fun and peace, but man, they pale in comparison to that.
Hmm.
My relationship with the higher power and my family.
Uh, Thank you so much. And Clay, thank you for being here. I feel like we need like 3 or 4 more
No.
episodes so we can dig into the research and we can dig
Yeah.
into, all of the different methodologies. Oh, yeah. That if you're willing, maybe we can
Anytime.
jump back on
Anytime.
and that would be incredible. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for joining us on one more week in exploring the journey of finding that one emotion that can't be counterfeited, and that's peace. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe so that you can continue this journey with us and that we can continue to spread the message. Until next week.